I don't even know how to start this. You guys probably won't realize this because I've been uploading over the past few weeks / months, but this is actually my first time taking a video this year and since my dad died. So yeah, it feels weird being in front of a camera again. Not weird, I'm just a little bit nervous, if you know what I mean. But yeah, as you can see by the title, today I'm going to have literally probably the most raw video I have ever put up anywhere, on YouTube, on the internet, on social media, whatever. I'm really nervous. I don't really have a script. This is something I've said that I wanted to do, so it's time to do it. So this is my testimony of losing my dad at the age of 22. Some of you guys here have been subscribed to me for a while, but I actually didn't announce this on my YouTube or anything, so many of you don't actually know. But on the 19th of November 2021, I lost my father. This was 1 week after my birthday, and yeah. So where do I start? I mean it when I say I don't have a script. I don't have a plan. I don't have a structure. I just want to be as real as possible in this video. And the purpose of me sharing what I'm about to share today is because I know how much this would help me 6 months ago. The day I'm releasing this is actually the 6-month anniversary of my dad's death. So I know how much this would have helped me 6 months ago when I was looking for videos all over the internet of how to grieve, how to cope with a loss, how to just mourn. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't really find anything helpful. I don't know if anything would have helped though, if I'm going to be honest, but I couldn't really find anything that I was looking for. And all I really needed was for somebody to tell me their story. Maybe, I don't know. I'm sure there's loads of people who told their stories. I just didn't see them at the time when I needed it the most. So yeah, I'm sharing this because I have learned a lot of lessons in grief, in death, and especially in the loss of a parent. And I want to share them with you guys. For those who have lost a parent or anybody close to you at all, I'm so sorry about that. And I hope that by hearing my story that is still ongoing, I haven't reached the end of the story yet. I hope it will some way, I don't know if the word is encourage, strengthen, I don't know. I just hope it will help in whatever way possible. So enough rambling. Okay, so essentially for the past few years of my life, specifically the past, I don't want to say how long exactly, but for the past few years of my life, I have known that my dad was ill. He had certain health challenges that I knew put a threat to his life. And I remember when we were first told by the doctors what was wrong with him, and I was so fearful at the time. I was quite, not crazily young, but I was younger than what I am now. And I remember being terrified because my dad was somebody who literally never got sick. I had never known him to have a cold, let alone for doctors to be telling us that he has this condition that, yeah, when I went to look up the survival rate or whatever, it says that people live for 3 to 5 years after receiving this diagnosis or whatever. So I was like, okay, and that's on average if they're receiving the help that they need. Some people go much earlier, and some people live up to 15 to 20 years after, which is why I wasn't really sure exactly what to expect. But I remember at the time literally just being terrified, and I remember I went to the Word of God at the time, and it's like God spoke to me through this particular scripture. It's in John chapter 11 verses 4, I think. I'm gonna check, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, John 11:4, and this is the story of Lazarus in the Bible. And Jesus says, this sickness is not unto death, but that God would be glorified therein. So this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God. And I remember I wrote it down, and I remember, I think I cried that day that I wrote it down. I was very, very upset in my heart, but I believed the word. I believed God. I believed Jesus, that this sickness was not unto death, but for the glory of God. And that was over 5 years ago. I actually still have the sheet with where I wrote it down at the time. Yeah. So at the time, I actually wrote down the wrong verse. I didn't realize until I found this sheet a few months ago when I went looking for it, but this is what I wrote down at the time. So yeah, when Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. And I wrote Luke 11:4, but it's actually John 11:4. And yeah, so I believed that, and I held on. I had faith. And after my dad received this particular diagnosis, I was basically the one taking care of him for the most part. I was preparing meals for him. I was just doing different things. I don't know how in detail I want to go into in this video, to be honest, because talking about this is raw enough for me, so I don't know if I want to go into the nits and, you know, the nooks and crannies of it or whatever. But essentially, I was taking care of him, and I was just trying my best to make his life better. I was definitely aware of the fact that anything could happen at any time, and I had to be prepared for that, right? And so in a way, you could say I started preparing for death, but not because I thought it would happen, but because I was now made conscious of the fact that there's somebody in my life who has a chance of going away. And it's not just a, you know, random crazy chance. Now it's actually a chance because their health is posing a risk. So yeah, I came to that realization, and it started informing the way I behaved. So I realized that life is short, and how you treat people matters. And I remember a quote that I saw. It wasn't actually a quote. I saw it as a comment on a Facebook post years ago. And it was after a tragedy, a huge world tragedy of some sort had happened, and somebody commented underneath, and they said, love the people around you like you will never see them again. Like, love them like that every single day. And that particular comment has stuck with me ever since. I don't even know how old I was when I saw it. I can't even remember exactly what it was in relation to, but it stuck with me because it kind of put this thing inside of me that you don't know what tomorrow holds. That's something we all learned from the pandemic as a whole. But yeah, I realized you really don't know what tomorrow holds, and therefore you have to love people and treat them every day like you'll never see them again. And so I tried to, you know, have that mindset in the way I would like treat my dad and take care of him, and just have conversations with him and whatever. And as time went on, it just seemed okay. Like, everything honestly seemed fine. And, you know, the time limit that they said was expected 3 to 5 years or whatever, it had passed. So I was like, okay, that's actually fine. That's actually good. I had this hope, right? I had this hope that he was going to be healed. I had this deep hope that my dad was going to be healed. It wasn't just a hope. I had strong faith in it. I prayed over this matter for years. Anybody who's been in, you know, certain fellowships that I used to be in or that I'm still in would know that I often put in the prayer point of, guys, can you help me pray for my dad, pray for my dad's health? And a lot of people joined me in prayer over the years. A lot of people joined me in prayer, and I genuinely believed that he would be healed. There were times I literally laid my hands on him, and I practiced the stuff that I was learning in the, you know, in the groups that I was in, and I would lay my hand on him, and I had full faith that God was going to heal him. And I was just waiting for the day that he would tell me I am completely healed of this thing. And I remember every time I would constantly ask him, like, what are the doctors saying? Are you getting better? Are you seeing improvement? And my dad was somebody of such strong faith himself that he would always answer my question with yes. Like, he would literally always say, yes, I'm getting better. yes, everything is improving. Yes, yes, yes. And what I guess I didn't realize at the time is my dad was a very strong man. He didn't want his children to worry about him. He really didn't. And so he, even if he was feeling weak or something, he wouldn't say it. He would always put on his strong voice and tell us that he's fine. And yeah, I kind of just believed that, and I genuinely believed that he was getting better as time was going on and stuff, and I believed that God would heal him. And I always saw it as, this is going to be such a great testimony that I get to tell people one day that my dad had this condition and God completely healed him and transformed him. And you know, I would use this testimony to give other people hope that God heals, God transforms, God this, God that. And I had a firm hope. Even when situations would happen that would, you know, send him to the hospital or cause a panic in me, I would just relax and say, nah, it's fine. This is all a testimony in the making, a testimony in the making, right? And then 2021 came. And I remember the beginning of the year, I had this fear. I had this fear of, what if this is the year that I lose him? And I was very like hyper aware during the year, like hyper aware of my daily decisions, hyper aware of the amount of time I was spending with him, hyper aware of how I would speak to him, how much I would text him, how much I communicate with him. I was trying to put in extra effort. I didn't believe he was going to die, but I had it in my mind that, you know, I should, you know, try to just live in a way as though I would never see him again. And that's the way I tried to live with almost everybody. It wasn't just restricted to my dad, right? But the thing is, the truth of the matter is, this was my biggest fear. Not the fear of losing a loved one, but specifically the fear of losing my father. That specific fear was my biggest fear for the past how many years of my life. I remember at my birthday, my last birthday, 22nd, my friends asked me a question. I think they were doing like a get to know me or whatever challenge, I don't know. And they asked me what's my biggest fear, and I knew deep in my heart the answer was losing my dad, but I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say it because I didn't want the mood of the room to become morbid. So I just said water, because I'm kind of scared of water. Not really, but I'm just not a good swimmer, like, so yeah. But yeah, it's been my biggest fear for a long time, and I was always afraid that it was going to happen. And of course, death is inevitable, but I just didn't want to experience it anytime close to now. And yeah, moving on to halfway through 2021, my dad traveled. He traveled to Nigeria. I remember the last day I saw him with my physical eyes when he was alive, and I remember him leaving. And I remember I sent him a particular text the day before his flight, and I said, Dad, please wake me up when you're gonna go to the airport so that I can say bye to you. And he replied me a few minutes later, and he was like, I surely will, my darling princess. Know that I will miss you, and I will always love you. I will always love you, my darling princess. And I remember I looked at that text and I was kind of like, that's so weird. Like, he's never said, like, it's not that he doesn't say stuff like I love you or whatever, but the way he phrased it, it made me raise my eyebrow. Like, I was like, why is he saying it like that? Like, as though I'm not gonna see him again. Do you know, like, I'll always love you and stuff. And the truth is, this is the first time my dad had gone to Nigeria in years, right? So I was kind of like, okay. But I didn't think much of it. But I do remember the next morning, him waking me up, telling me he's going to the airport. And I went downstairs. I gave him a hug. I'm vividly seeing this as I'm talking. And I said bye. And I remember after locking the door and he was going to the taxi, I ran to my mom's room. I'm to the window. I can see all of this so much as I'm talking. I saw him enter the taxi and shut the door, and I watched the taxi drive off, and there was just this pain in my heart. I didn't understand it at the time, but there was this pain in my heart. I didn't know what it was. All I knew is I felt a deep, intense sorrow seeing him enter that car. I don't know why. I just felt like a chapter had closed. I didn't think it was death, but I felt like a chapter had closed, right? But I just remember, I distinctly remember the sorrow I felt on that particular day. And then what happened was, yeah, he went to Nigeria. And when he went there, his health conditions became a bit more complicated. But I didn't realize this. I didn't know, because like I said, my dad was a very strong person. Very strong. He wouldn't tell you if something was wrong with him. So yeah, fast forward to the month of November. Actually, the end of October. This was like around the 29th of October. I started having this sickening, and I mean sickening, feeling inside my stomach. Like the type of feeling that made me want to cry. I cried my eyes out. I'll never forget. And I had this terrible feeling something bad was gonna happen soon. I'm not one of those gut feeling type of people. It doesn't happen to me often at all, especially physically. Like I'll physically feel sick or something. But I remember it, and I remember I texted a few people, a few leaders in the faith, and I asked them to pray with me, or to pray for me rather, and pray for my dad, because I was afraid something bad was going to happen. And everyone said it was going to be okay, it was going to be fine. So I said, okay, no problem. And a few days after I had that feeling, I actually called him, and I had one of the deepest conversations I've ever had with my dad in my entire life that day. And that's why in a way I see God's hand in this. I see God's hand in the fact that, like, for example, if I had not had that deep, intense, fearful feeling, I would never have picked up the phone to call him and have that conversation that I did have with him or whatever. So yeah, I told him a lot of things, and he told me a lot of things, and I got an insight into him beyond what I guess beyond what I saw on the surface. And yeah, I had that conversation with him, and he was telling me that he's okay, he has faith. He specifically told me certain things, like he said 3 pastors had come to pray for him, and they had encouraged him and given him, a word of hope and stuff like that. And I was like, okay. And I believed him, and I was so happy, and like, not happy, but I remember having this sense of peace and everything. And I was like, you know what, everything's gonna be okay. And in that conversation, I remember him telling me, I'm content with my life, Agogo. He didn't believe he was going to die, but he made it clear to me that he was content. And whether he lives more or whether he doesn't, he was content with his life so far. And I know deep down my dad really wanted more. He still wanted to achieve so much. I mean, he was literally running for the governor of his state. But he said he was content, and I had this sense of peace after speaking to him that day. But I still had this kind of fear that something was going to happen as the months were getting closer and closer to my birthday. I mean, as the days were getting closer and closer, I had this fear. I actually thought I was going to lose him before, simply because of this strong feeling I started getting. But nothing happened. But the night of my birthday, I had a dream. And in that dream, my dad's spirit came to me. And this is not like a dream I've ever had before. Never had a dream like this in my life. I knew it was distinct, and I know why my dreams are, coming from God, because they're just different from my usual dreams. So I had this dream that my dad had come to visit us in Ireland again. And I'm not going to get too much into the details of the dream, but what I'll say is it felt like a goodbye. It felt like a goodbye. And my dad is a very thankful person. He's always saying thank you, thank you, thank you to everybody. And that dream, he was saying thank you. It's like I was seeing thanks like floating off from him to like so many different people that he's met at different stages of his life. And yeah, I just remember waking up and I was like, that felt like a goodbye. And I was actually afraid. I was afraid that that dream was telling me that he's died today or something. So I remember picking up the phone to call him, and he didn't pick up. However, like what I would always do when my dad wouldn't pick up is I check his WhatsApp last seen, and I saw he was last seen, you know, around that day. So I was like, okay, he's fine. Even if he doesn't pick up, he's fine right now and everything. So yeah, he was okay. And I remember I went out with my friends that evening and I told them about this dream that I had. And I told them one thing that made me afraid about the dream is because I had a sense of peace when I woke up. Usually if I have a dream that I don't like, for example, something like that, I will know it's from the enemy because I wake up with fear, with anxiety, with just something off. But this time, despite having that type of goodbye themed dream, I woke up feeling peace. And when I say peace, I mean a strong peace. And to be very honest with you guys, I hated that peace. I hated it. I hated it. I was so upset because I was like, why should I have peace after having that type of dream? What's that meant to tell me? Because I knew straight away that that meant the dream was coming from God. The type of peace I felt and the type of dream it was, I knew that means that dream is coming from God. So I was like, what is this supposed to mean? Anyways, after having that dream, 2 days later, I called my dad. He finally picked up, or he called me, or I called him. I think I called him. And yeah, I remember him telling me, I can hear his voice. He said, I'm okay, Agogo. I'm okay. Because he could tell by my voice that I was worried and everything. And I told him about the new job that I got. And I was just asking, how is he? Is he getting better? And he was like, I'm improving. I'm getting better. And that was the last conversation I ever had with him. 6 days after that conversation, I got a phone call from my auntie telling me that my dad was dead. And that was a very hard day. It was a very hard day. I still remember the shock, the confusion. The main feeling I felt at the time was a deep, deep, deep confusion. I was very, very deeply confused and upset and all of these things. Not really upset, actually, to tell the truth. I was just confused more than anything. And then the pain started coming in, and then the fear, and there was just this rush of emotions. I didn't believe it. To be very honest, I didn't believe it at all. For days, I actually believed everyone was lying to me. I believed that he was gonna call me in a few days and let me know, oh, it was a mistake, or that one of his brothers would call me to let me know, oh, it's a mistake, he's actually fine, the hospital made a mistake, the doctors, they pronounce him dead by accident, he's fine. And I didn't care how embarrassing that would look. I didn't care how, like, if I texted my friends already saying, oh my gosh, my dad is dead, and then I say, never mind, he's alive. I didn't care. I didn't care how it would look. All I wanted was to know that he's alive, and everybody was wrong. Everybody was wrong. And I remember around that time, my friends started visiting me in my house, and they were obviously coming to comfort me, and I remember it's like my mind would be splitting or something. I don't even know. It's like I was almost dissociating at some point. I would sit back and I'd be like, wait, why are they here? I wouldn't understand. I was so deeply, heavily confused at the time. I couldn't understand why people were visiting me, because it's like, oh, what's the occasion? My dad's not actually dead, so why are they all here? You know? And it was just this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth in my mind, and I was just confused. Like, and I was so obviously unstable and very, very emotional. And I, honestly speaking, my dad's death taught me that I have ride or die friends. I have very, very, very true friends. I did have some people that disappointed me, but I choose to appreciate the efforts of people and the way people supported me in that time like never before. And I'm not a person who usually like relies on other people for help or who asked for help, but that was the first time in my life that I knew I couldn't do this alone. Because the truth is, I always had this fear. I had this fear it was gonna pass, and I was always afraid I was gonna go insane when it happened. And when I say insane, I'm not speaking dramatically. I genuinely thought I was going to go insane. But thanks be to God, God kept my mind, God kept my sanity, and He surrounded me with a support system of people. And even going to the subject of God, that was a very, very tough time for me. I didn't speak to God for a month after my dad died. Every time I tried, in fact, I didn't even want to try. But when I did try, it wouldn't work. I wouldn't want to talk. I would like sit there ready, and then I'd be like, no. Because I was upset, angry, confused. I was kind of like, why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you tell me this was gonna happen? I was so deeply in pain. I didn't want to talk to God at all. At all. And it kind of scared me, because I always wondered if after, losing the death of somebody, or after the death of somebody really close to me, was I going to still have this faith that I have? I've told people about God. I've openly made it clear to others of my faith in Jesus Christ. I always wondered, is death going to be the thing that shakes me or rocks me or makes me walk away or whatever? So it was a very interesting time. It was a very interesting time, and it was hard. It was obviously very hard. It was so intense. I honestly didn't think the pain was ever gonna go away. In ways it hasn't. It's just manageable. It's just manageable. And it does reduce in intensity. For anybody who might be watching this who's lost somebody recently, I can tell you it does reduce in its intensity. It's not gonna feel as bad as it is now forever. But I was afraid at the time it would. I was afraid that I was going to feel the way I did forever, and that scared me. I really lost myself after I lost my dad. I lost my sense of self. I couldn't be myself anymore. Couldn't make the same jokes. My personality literally dwindled. I didn't leave my house almost at all. Anytime anybody wanted to see me, they'd have to come here. It was very rare to be able to get me out of the house. I didn't like stepping outside, not even for walks. And I'm a person, I used to love the outdoors. I used to love being outside. It changed me. It really, really did. And yeah, it was hard. It was definitely hard at the beginning, because I was just kind of like, I was just in shock, obviously. I was just in shock. And the thing is, God did prepare me. I didn't realize it at the time, but those feelings I was getting, the dreams I was having, even the years in advance, God was preparing me. 1 year before my dad died, He sent me a text message, and He shared me this testimony, His own testimony of like certain things that people had said about him because of the advancements that he had made in his community, Eku, in Nigeria, in Delta State. And I remember he sent me that, and then he said, please save this and share it with the public when my time to return to God comes. This was in July of 2020. At the time, I was kind of like, why are you talking about, your time to return to God? You're not going to die. You're going to live long in Jesus' name. I literally typed, you're going to live long in Jesus' mighty name. But I said, I'll do it. I didn't know 1 year and how many months later I was going to have to fulfill that request that I made that request that he made to me. But yeah, God was preparing me, I guess. God was preparing me. And it was tough, It was tough. And the truth of the matter is, I really wrestled with a lot of things. I wrestled with my emotions. I wrestled with my faith. I really, really wrestled with myself, particularly. I suffered heavy regret after my dad died. I've never felt regret like that in my entire life. In fact, let me tell you all the truth. I'm not a regretful person. I don't regret stuff. Even when I do bad things, I don't regret them. Because to me, it's just like you live and you learn. Whatever mistake I made now, I can learn from it. So I don't regret anything, right? This is the first time in my life that I have suffered regret. And it's almost like because I wasn't a regretful person in the past, it came to bite me. Do you understand? Like the regret came in full force, like a tide at me. And honestly speaking, that's probably been one of the hardest parts in this whole grieving process. The regret I've had to battle with. Regretting not spending time with him, regretting not hearing enough stories from him, regretting not calling him more, regretting not talking to him more, regretting not doing this, regretting not showing him that, regretting not showing more interest in these. I had so many regrets, and like even the way I'm saying it now, it's not even like all those regrets have gone. Thankfully, they don't eat at me anymore. There was a time my regrets were genuinely consuming my entire being. I just felt terrible with myself. Terrible. Because I have this attitude of being super duper hard on myself. So I was condemning myself. I was saying, you should have done this better. You were so selfish. This, that, that. And I don't know. Like I faced regret like never before in my entire life, and it was tough. My goodness gracious, it was tough. It got to the point where I genuinely was like, I would rather die than experience the death of somebody close to me ever again. Because I knew how the regret was eating at me. I knew how it was eating at me, and I never wanted to feel it again. I never wanted to feel it again. It's not like I was suicidal, but I was just like, and God forbid this now, but I was just like, I would rather be the one to die next. God forbid. But next, rather than me having to suffer death again of a person that I love and care about. And I just started regretting a lot of things. And do you know what? That's the thing about losing somebody. When you lose somebody permanently, it actually changes the way you see them. It changes the way you see people. It changes the way you literally see life. Like the way I saw my dad while he was alive is very different to how I see him now now that he is dead. And the truth of the matter is, like, I really had to face my front and realize that, none of this stuff matters. Like none of this actually matters. And honestly, yeah, that is probably one of the biggest lessons, probably the biggest lesson I learned from death. All of this is meaningless. There's a verse in the Bible in the book of Ecclesiastes. I think Ecclesiastes 1 verses, either verses 1 or 1 verses 2. Chapter 1, verses 2 or verses 1. And it says, vanity, vanity, everything is vanity. I'm actually going to open it now. Yeah, 1 verses 2. NIV, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And this was the first time I really understood. I understood what King Solomon was talking about when he said that. I said, yeah, I agree. it's all meaningless. All of it is absolutely meaningless. And by that, I don't mean, you know, the world is empty or I'm empty inside or whatever. But when I say I felt like everything was meaningless, it's that I realized all these things that we put so much importance on, that we put so much stress on, that we, you know, say in our minds, it's all this, it's all that. None of it actually matters. Like, none of it actually matters. The argument you have with people that you know you want to talk to them again, but because of your pride, because of your ego, you say, no, I'm not doing that. It doesn't matter. You want to say sorry to a person, but you're afraid of how weak that's going to make you look. It doesn't matter. The pride that you have, that you're showing towards something that you genuinely love and you genuinely care for, none of it matters. If you want to call somebody, don't wait for them to call you, thinking that, oh, they need to prove that they care for me. I've done it enough. If you want to call somebody, call them, fam. If you want to text somebody, text them. If you want to tell somebody you love them, tell them. If you want to tell somebody you miss them, tell them. Guys, I beg you, one of the greatest things I learned during this time is that none of this stuff matters. These things that we elevate and we exalt and we say it's so important, and in our minds we magnify it, none of it matters. None of it matters. None of it. There are so many things that my regrets were rooted in based on this fact, based on the thing that I was kind of like, I should have done that, but because I was full of pride, I wanted to do this, I wanted to talk to him on this day, I wanted to blah 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 blah, but things like pride, things like fear, things like ego, these things stopped me. And all for what? All for what when you're never gonna see a person again? It's all for what? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that's one of the biggest things I actually learned. None of this stuff matters. When next you get upset or angry or whatever about something, you need to actually sit with yourself and ask yourself, does any of this matter? Especially if it's something that you care about. Because one day you're never going to see them again. Whether it's you to go or whether it's them to go, one day you're never going to see them again, and you'll realize none of that mattered. If you love somebody, tell them. If you miss them, tell them. If you want them to be more present in your life, tell them. If you want to go out with them, tell them. If you want to hang out with them, tell people things and do things. Don't be in the position that I was essentially in, where I was kind of like, if only I had done this, if only I had done that. Don't be in that position. You're alive. If you're watching this video, thanks be to God, you are alive. Do something with the fact that you have life in your body, life in your bones. You know what I mean? Like, so that was one of the biggest things I had to realize, that all of this is meaningless. And to be very honest, the other side of that is the regret side, yeah. But one thing I actually came to understand is it actually doesn't matter in terms of, I felt like if I could go back and do things differently, I would not be in as much pain as I'm in now. But guess what? I realized that even if I went back and turned the clock and did everything, 10 times better than I did, I still would have regrets. I still would have regrets. That's the thing about death. Death has this finality to it that you will always think of other possibilities of things that you could have done differently, things that you could have done better. Because you realize that you can never do them again, it brings all of these things to mind. But the truth of the matter is, even when my dad was alive, I told you guys, in the years leading up to his death, I was aware of the fact that this could happen. And therefore, I was actually trying to do things in order for me to avoid that feeling of regret when the time came. And guess what? The time came and I felt it anyways. So that's for you to even know that when you lose somebody, you're always going to have regrets, man. You're always going to have regrets. You just have to learn how to manage them and how to forgive yourself. That's a big thing I had to learn. I had to learn how to forgive myself. How to forgive myself. When my dad passed, I realized one thing. I realized that he was trying his best. And that helped me to extend a lot of grace and compassion and love towards him. But guess what? At one point, after a few months, I had to tell myself, but you tried your best too. You are trying your best even now too. All we can ever do is our best. All we can ever really do is what we know best or what we think best. And we have to forgive ourselves for not doing better because we didn't know better. If I knew my dad was going to die at the time he would, of course I would have done better, but I didn't know. I didn't know. And I have to forgive myself. I have to forgive myself for not knowing. I had to forgive myself. And I have to actively forgive myself because I'm not in control. I'm not in control of the future. I'm not in control of the past. I'm not in control of nothing. Therefore, what I have to make do with it. Meaning I had to forgive. I really had to forgive. I also realized upon my dad dying that, do you know what? There's certain things you can only learn in death. When my dad died, one of the things that God spoke to me, maybe like within a month of him being dead, he told me to read the book of Job. I said no. Firstly, remember, I wasn't even communicating with God, but I remember I heard him telling me, study the book of Job. I said no. I said, I'm not reading that book because I know what that book contains. I know the story of Job. I know the type of suffering he went through. And guys, when I tell you, 2021 was not just a hard year because of my dad died. A lot of things happened in 2021. My year was literally marked by suffering. And I'm not even being dramatic. My friends know that better than other people. My year was literally marked by suffering. So many disappointments happened. So many disappointments. I lost my dad. I lost my cousin. I didn't get into the course that I wanted to get into. So many different things didn't work out. I had so many disappointments. So many disappointments that broke me. Broke me at my core. Broke me. And so when God was telling me, read Job, I was like, never. I've read the book of Job even before that, but I said I'm not reading it now. And it's because I was afraid that, I didn't know what I was afraid of, but I just didn't want any part in that. Do you get me? But I found that when I did eventually read it, I had a perspective that I never had before when I read that book. I've read the book of Job maybe 3 or 4 times in the past. The time I read it then, I've never read it like that before. Never. And it's because I finally understood. I had an empathy with Job. I understood so many things that he was saying. I was literally like, yep, I'm with you there. I'm with you there. So many of the sentiments he felt, even the anger, the sorrow, all of these, even the rude things that he expressed towards God, I felt it all. I felt it all. So I was like, Job, I hear you. And you know the powerful thing about that, yeah? I actually realized that one of the reasons that God wanted me to study that book is because he wanted me to know that I'm not alone in what I'm feeling right now. He wanted to show me an example of somebody who also has felt the same feelings, the same sentiments, and for me to be comforted by that. And I did, because you know what? In that moment, I felt like God actually saw me. I felt like he actually could see me. Because I'm realizing God is directing me towards this character, this person who God himself, he knows that Job and I relate on a deep level, and God directs me towards it so that I would know I'm not alone in this, and God sees me. He sees me in the pain. He knows how hard it is. He knows how terrible it is. And it touched my heart that God would do that. Like, honestly speaking, it touched my heart. It touched my heart so much. So much. And I learned so much from that book of Job. I learned so much from it when I read it that time. So much from it. It completely changed my perspective, even on suffering and on God. It made me trust God more. It made me realize that God's wisdom is far greater than mine. And guys, to tell you the truth, I started reading that book of Job looking for answers, because for the first few weeks, months really, after my dad died, I had so many questions for God. That was probably the main reason I wasn't talking to him. I had so many questions and I didn't know where to go for the answers. And it was only after reading that book of Job, that I realized I don't need the answers. I just need to trust him. And I had a peace. I finally had this peace that I was looking for. Because Job went through all of that suffering, and we, the readers, we know why he did, but Job didn't. He never found out. But at the end of it, he came to this realization that he doesn't need to know. Because God knows better. And I just have to accept that. that God knows better. And you know what? Because of what I know about God, because of what I know about the character of God, because I know that he is kind, loving, caring, peaceful, because I know the truth of who he is, I have peace that any decision he makes, he knows better. He knows better than I do. He knows better than I do. And I know that there's certain things that we even go through and we're kind of like, God, why would you let that happen? I don't believe that God is the reason for suffering, or he's always the one who inflicts suffering. But I do believe that he knows better. And I do believe that when something happens to us, that firstly, God doesn't want it to happen to us. God never intended for death to be a part of the human experience, nor any of the type of evil, wicked things that people do. He never intended, never. We were meant to live eternally. If you look in the book of Genesis, you'll see we were meant to live eternally. And that made me realize God hates death just as much as I do. But there's one thing that I know about God in Genesis 50:20. What the enemy intends to harm us, God knows how to turn it for good, and therefore he knows better. So even when the enemy does get away with certain things, God knows better. He knows better. And I just had to have peace in that. My human knowledge and my human wisdom, it's not enough, guys. It's not enough. I can't even understand the way flipping physics works, let alone the entire universe. I would rather trust somebody who knows everything, who sees everything, who is bigger than everything, who has good intention, who has love in his heart, who cares deeply for creation. I'd rather trust him than I would me, a person who knows little to nothing. I don't even know what's on my exams. Do you understand? Me that has evil intentions in my heart, me that is wicked at times. Me that doesn't care for a person that I don't know. But how much more God? How much more God? So I rather trust him. I much rather trust him. And so even though my dad died, I know that God did what was best. And I don't have to understand. I don't have to understand. If I 6 months ago heard me saying what I'm saying now, I would look at myself as though I had two heads. But now I get it. I don't have to understand. I think a lot of people lose their faith in God after going through things like this, after experiencing death, especially the death of somebody they love so much. I think the reason why they lose their faith is because they're holding on to that need to be able to understand. And it comes with that human desire to be in control. If we understand, then we can be in control, you know? And we don't like the fact that we're not in control. So we get angry at God when he does things that are outside our control, because we deeply want to be the one in control of things. But the thing is, you just have to trust who God is. And by that I mean you just have to trust his good and kind character, because he is good and kind. He is. That's who Jesus is. And it's crazy because after literally the worst thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life, my faith in God is stronger. If you ask me how it happened, I don't know. Guys, I used to be somebody who was obsessed with being in control. Obsessed. To the point where I would try to control situations. Sometimes not control people, but try to just work things out that in a way that I would feel secure and I would feel okay. I felt a deep need to be in control. And for the first time in my life, because of my dad's death, I no longer feel the need to be in control, nor do I even want to. So it's weird how God works these things out. My dad has died, somebody I love so much, and my faith in God is stronger. And you know what? I have faith that I'm going to see my dad again. I do have faith I'm going to see my dad again. I believe that he is in heaven, and I believe by God's grace, because I believe in Jesus Christ and I have a relationship with him, that I will go to heaven and I will see him. I will see my dad again one day. But yeah, it's crazy because I have gained so much. Death is a grim teacher, but an excellent one. I have learned to appreciate people like never before. I have learned to let go of petty things that don't matter. I've learned to not argue about stupid things. I've learned to listen to people, listen deeply, because one thing I wish so deeply I did was that I listened more to my dad's stories and asked him for more stories. So now when I'm with people, old, young, literally, you could be a child, you could be flipping 80 years old. I love listening to people, listening to their stories, listening to what they have to say. I really appreciate life in a way I never did before because of death, you know? And I know this is what my dad would have wanted. He would not have wanted me to see his death and for me to decline. He would have wanted me to elevate. He would have wanted me to elevate, honestly speaking. My dad was such an inspiration. When I went to his funeral recently in Nigeria, I really, for the first time, grasped who my dad is, right? People flew from far and wide. People that he has not seen in years flew all the way from America to Nigeria just for the funeral. I saw the meaning of impact. I saw the meaning of impact. I listened to the stories that people who are friends and family of my dad told me, and it completely inspired me. It inspired me to live for impact. It doesn't actually even matter. Like, it actually doesn't matter how many people you touch, how many people know your name, how many people you have a good reputation amongst. What matters is, are you impacting people? I learned a similar thing when my cousin died last year too. She taught me that life is about impact. She was young, but she taught me that life is about impact. It's not about how many things you even get to accomplish. It's about how deeply do you touch the people around you in your life. And I learned that from my dad's death too. I really, really did. I didn't even know the type of man my dad was fully until he died. And I still don't know fully the type of man he was. But I saw a perspective that has deeply inspired me to be like that and even be greater. He did amazing things for his community. And he didn't have to, but he did because he loved people so much. So much. My dad was an amazing man. He created scholarships from people from his village in Nigeria. He set up one system, like a payment system for widows. He built a church, he built a shopping mall, he built these things for his community, not for his own good. In fact, he barely even told me he did these things. He didn't tell me. I didn't know a lot of these things until he passed away. I didn't actually know the depth of what he was doing. He really, really, really loved people, and that's inspired me to love people the same. My dad was a very, very wise man. And he knew what mattered. He really did know what mattered. And it's inspired me to now be like that, to know what matters, you know, and to love people deeply, 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 deeply love people. I want to love people from the depths of my heart, because that's what I've seen my dad's life to be an example of. And so I'm thankful to death, and that's why I call this a testimony. I'm thankful to death because it's taught me to appreciate life. I know some of you saw the title of this video and you're like, why would she call that a testimony? But it's because it has revealed to me more about Jesus Christ himself. And isn't that what testimonies are? Testimonies are things that point us to Christ, that showcase the work of Christ. My dad's death has showcased the work of Christ to me and in me. The person I am now, I'm still growing, I'm still grieving. Don't get me wrong, I'm still grieving. I am still highly upset by everything that's happened, and I do still wish I could bring him back if I could. Just to tell the truth. But I have a perspective that I couldn't have had if he was still alive today. The people I've met, the friendships I've made, the experiences I've had, the way I have learned to embrace life, I could not have done if he was still here. Even the way I'm learning to love people, to forgive quickly. to be kind. These are things I could not learn except he was gone. Because this is the thing, if you haven't experienced death, you won't know what I mean. But if you have, you might. There's something about the finality of death that changes something in you. There are things I knew in theory before experiencing death. But when I saw it face to face, something in me changed. Something in me changed. People had told me before, appreciate people, love people, etc., etc. But when you face the death of a person, basically the finality of the life of a person that you care for and loved, it changes you in a way that's not even in your control. I can't control the way I've changed. I can't. But I think it's a testimony to God. And you know, one of my testimonies is even this. Throughout the time my dad has died till now, I have not experienced depression. And to some of you who are watching this, you'd be like, okay, so, but some of you guys, maybe if you watch some of my past videos where I've spoken about the seasonal depression that I experienced and just my journey, I've never actually shared my full like coming to Christ testimony on this channel before or anywhere on social media really. Not that I know of, but my story of coming to Christ is heavily tied to the depression I used to have. Maybe one day I'll share my testimony, I don't know. But the point I'm making is I didn't experience depression, and that was crazy to me. That's crazy to me, especially because of the time it happened. My dad died in November. With me, for the past maybe 8 or so years of my life, every single winter I experienced depression. Every single winter, every single time. And it always comes around November. Lasts until maybe January, February-ish time. And sometimes if I'm unlucky, it will come back in the middle of the year. Last year, that's one of the reasons why 2021 is so hard for me. I experienced a 6-month depressive episode from April until April plus 6, maybe October. So, yeah. I didn't experience depression, and that is something that is such a testimony to me that God is real, because I prayed for this. I believed that God was going to take this thing from me, deliver me from that spirit of depression, and he did. He did, and I believe that I'm free. I believe that if I did not experience depression after the death of my father, then depression can't touch me again, fam. And I'm not gonna lie and say it doesn't still find me. Literally, no joke, 2 or 3 days ago, that spirit was coming for me again. I was telling my friends, a few of them, but I said, no, I'm not letting you come back. I'm not letting those ungodly thoughts telling me I'm worthless, useless, shouldn't be here. I'm not letting them come back to my life again. Especially after the episode I had last year. Never. My friend prophesied something to me during that episode. She told me, God says this is the last time that you're going to experience depression, and I believe it. I believed it. Actually, at the time, I didn't believe it, let me be honest, because I was like, girl, you don't know. You don't know the type of relationship I have with depression. Me and depression were like 5 and 6. Do you understand? But we thank God for deliverance. Because even though I didn't believe it at the time, God brought it to pass, and I was broken from that. And so that's part of my testimony too. But the main part of my testimony is just that I lost my dad, and I'm okay. I lost my dad at the age of 22, and I'm okay. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I asked for. It's something I never imagined happening. And it is something that I do wish I could change sometimes, but I'm okay. That's a testimony. The testimony is not that I, became a billionaire afterwards. I started a crazy business. I blew up on YouTube. I did the testimony is I'm okay. I'm actually okay. And there are days, because I don't want anybody who's grieving to look at this and be like, but I'm not okay. Everybody grieves differently. And just because I'm like this now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be like this forever. Do you understand? There are days when I'm literally in my bed weeping, sobbing, crying my heart out. So it's not as easy as, it isn't. I'm even surprised I'm not crying. or I have not cried in this video, because that's what I was actually afraid was gonna happen. But the thing is, I've went through what I went through and I'm okay. Do you know how crazy that is? That is a finger up to the kingdom of hell. Sorry, because I know this should be more PG Christianity, but it's a finger up to them because I am okay. I went through my worst fear and the worst thing to ever happen to me in my life, and I'm actually okay. And I believe it's because of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, my Lord, my Savior, my friend, my King, my everything. Without him, I would be nothing. He comforted me. There was a time I felt this deep frustration during the grieving. I felt this deep frustration because I was just like, God, really? Are you not gonna? I wanted God to show up to me in a physical form. I wanted one of those crazy supernatural encounters, so I would know that God really loves me. But I realized that God actually loves me in ways that I didn't, I guess directly associate with God. So I saw God's love through my friends, through church members, through family, through so many people. I saw God's love express itself to me in a multitude of ways, and instead of being angry at God, I let go and I decided to look for his love. And when I decided to look for God's love in everything, I saw it in everything. I saw evidence of it in everything. So that's my testimony. My testimony is that I lost my dad at the tender age of 22, and I'm okay. I'm loved by God. I am cherished by Jesus. I am a friend of the Holy Spirit, and I'm okay. I'm okay. So yeah, I want to say thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you watched this far to the very end. God bless you. And I just pray for every single person here who has experienced death, whether it was now or whether it was 10, 25, 2, 1 year ago. I pray that God would comfort you and that he would restore hope to you, because I know what it feels like, but I know God is a restorer, so I pray he will do that for you. I also want to say, if anybody resonates with anything that I've said and you want to have a conversation, please feel free to reach out to me. My socials are going to be in the description, so you can send me a message on Instagram, and we can talk. But I want to say from the depths of my heart again, thank you guys so much for watching. I was actually terrified to make this video. As you could probably tell at the start, I was super duper nervous, but I feel so much peace now, and I'm just grateful. I'm super, 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 super grateful. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm wishing you an amazing day, amazing year, amazing life. Whether this is the only time you'll ever watch my video or whether it's the 10th time you watch my video, doesn't matter. I'm wishing you an amazing life. God bless you all so much.